Hello everybody, welcome back. So part 5, again quite short, but we're used to that in this series. It's smaller parts, and once again I'm confused as to where Kelsier is. I feel like he went underwater. He's somehow doing these crossings between the world that he's in and bringing things across from the real world. So it is a mystery, and I feel like a lot of people advised me not to read this book next, and a lot of people did advise me to read this book next, but I just feel like there's so much that I'm going to find out from this book from reading other books. So I think I'm just going to have to live with it, at least for the duration of this book. However, having known Sanderson, maybe he will give me some answers. But either way, what I've just read was extremely interesting. We get a lot of clues about this different race of people, it would seem. They have white and blue tabards, and their leaders are like bold with puckered lips and raggedy skin. And the skin is, this like silvery, dark silvery grey or something along those lines. So it wouldn't seem like they're humans like the Scar or like the nobility from Scadrial. So my guess is that they are from maybe a different world, or they are like the product of one of the different shards or different gods. And they mention a different shard as well, or 2 different shards, which is very exciting. But on top of that, they mention Threnody, I think it is. Let me see. Yes, Threnody and Threnodites, which I would assume are just people from Threnody. But they mention it as if they are talking about not the people that we know. That's not their name for the people that we know, like the Scar and the nobility, or the Colossus, or anyone like that from the world we've been living in. It seems like that might be their rivals or enemies from their own world potentially, but I don't know. It's hard to know. They also mention like a cognitive mist or something along those lines, and there's just a lot. So I don't know what any of that is, but we will find out later, and it just enriches the story. It's nice to know that there's some things that I'm not going to get the answers to quickly. And this book has been a lot of mystery, not in mystery in the same way that we had in the original trilogy, where it was like, okay, I can start to piece this together and I can make good guesses. Mystery as in, I have absolutely no idea what's going on, and it's clearly from a much wider universe that I need more answers from, for I can start to get answers about what is going down. So the other shards, we hear someone mention drawing on fortune. So I would guess that fortune is one of the shard names, and I think it's mainly, I'm guessing that because it was capitalized, so obviously that must be the name of something. And I believe that their shard, that they are like not necessarily descendant from, but like worship or get their powers from, or are most similar to, was devotion. And they keep on rubbing this stuff on their skin, and they seem very devoted to this stuff that they're rubbing on their skin. So maybe that's like that god's version of Atium, or that god's version of we don't have a name for it, but whatever turns people into Mistborns, and if you stay devoted to it, then it will keep you alive through your devotion, or something like that. It's a bit of a reach, but that was the only thing I could come up with. But I mean, it kind of makes sense, right? But anyway, next thing we find out is that if you can be connected to a shard as that vessel dies, then you can take its power, was what I understood. And their way that they planned on becoming connected to a shard was with this like super strong juice stuff. And I have no idea what that juice could be, but the guess that I had, the prediction that I had for it, is that maybe it's something to do with Adenausium. Maybe because it was all of those shards were a part of Adenausium. Adenausium was split up. So maybe to feel connected to the shard, you need to somehow feel connected to Adenausium. It was liquid, it was really shiny and cool, and obviously had some very powerful properties. So that led me to believe maybe it was Adenausium's blood or something along those lines. It's the only thing I could come up with, but again, it kind of makes sense. You can see where I'm coming from, even if I'm miles away potentially. And then we get an absolutely incredible scene where Kelsier steals the liquid, and it's Kelsier at his best. Bamboozling, confounding, stealing, fighting, scaring, and robbing people. And it was so good. It was maybe one of the best Kelsier scenes outside of his death scene. You know, when he fights the Inquisitor, like that's one of the best scenes from the entirety of the trilogy, if not the best scene. Like just watching him in his element, mastering the pushing and the pulling, which are obviously his strongest suit when it came down to being a Mistborn. That was amazing. But this was a really, really fun scene as well. So what do I think is going to happen next? I think I'm on the last section, which is good, not because I want it to be over, but because I'm excited to be able to see what finishes here. We're obviously going to get what Kelsier does. We're going to get the death of preservation. So we're going to get the death of preservation, how Kelsier is involved in that, and I feel like he's probably very heavily involved in that, because we do get that in the original trilogy. Nobody sees it, but we get the man falling from the sky, if I'm not mistaken. It's a while ago that I read it now. So obviously Kelsier is going to be involved in that, and clearly he must give this golden juice, the blood of Adonalsium, in my opinion, to Sazed, and I would guess that he's heavily involved in how Sazed manages to become harmony and become ruin and preservation, and helps his friend ascend into not just godhood but double godhood on paper. So I'm just fired up for that. Again, in this series I've not done a bunch of predicting. I feel like I finally managed to get something here, but it's just been so strange and I've had almost no background to go off of, so it's been difficult. But I appreciate you watching. If you've enjoyed this, there'll be another one out there next Sunday at 10, and then I maybe read something in between, but I'm fairly certain I'm going to move on to the Stormlight Archive after this, so come along with me.